So here we are, ready to start. So good afternoon, everybody on the book club. And I'm sure more will join after we begin and we'll have a larger group. We are discussing a book today, which is, so readable, so pleasant, so easygoing, and yet brings up so many important issues. So we have Alka Joglekar talking about The Help by Katherine Stockett. It has been made into a film. Some of you might have seen the movie version. Well, whether you have or not, whether you read the book or seen the movie or neither, you're going to learn about it today from Alka. Alka is an IT consultant. So she has, those abilities which I conspicuously lack. And therefore, I wish that a part of her, would be part of me. But she's a very good reader. And I'm so glad that she's so enthusiastic and she has, volunteered to do this book. I hope she will volunteer to do more. I remember you had done The Remains of the Day, hadn't you, Alka?
Yeah.
Excellent presentation. That too, very important book, I thought that was. Okay, so today we are talking about The Help. Alka, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mohini. I'll just share my screen and start with the presentation. Oh, okay. Good evening, everybody. So today I will be talking about and presenting and hopefully we'll be discussing the book called The Help, which is written by Katherine Stockett. Now, before I actually start talking about the book, I'd like to talk a little bit about the societal framework at that time, at the time of the book. Now, the book is set in Jackson, Mississippi in the US, and the year is 1962. So at that time in America, Mississippi had racial segregation and the civil rights movement was just starting. So before actually going to the book, I would like to talk a little bit about the history of Black people in America, since racial discrimination is a very big part of the book. So what I will be talking about will be, first I'll talk a little bit about the history, then about the story of the book, the author, the characters, the style, the writing style, and then the themes. So to start off with the history, actually the first slave ship which came to the US came to Virginia from Africa in 1619. That's how long back it started. And slavery was an accepted practice in the US and many other countries in the world for over 200 years. And it was kind of the major factor for the economic growth of those countries. Now, in the US, from 1861 to 1865, there was a civil war which was fought between the northern states and the southern states. The main reason for that was slave labor, which the southern states had, and they enjoyed the benefits of that, and they wanted to spread it around to other territories. The northern states were totally against it, and so the southern state decided to secede from the Union, and that's when the Civil War happened. Eventually, it ended in 1865, and the southern states lost. And that is the time when slavery was officially abolished in the US. Okay, so from 1690 when it started, it was more than 200 years since it was abolished. Now, Abraham Lincoln was the president at that time, and he had actually great plans for the southern states, which were in complete ruins at the end of the Civil War. But unfortunately, he was assassinated just a few days after the end of the Civil War, and his successor was Andrew Johnson, couldn't really, carry on or carry forward his plans. So much like, in the post-World War I Germany, which was in ruins, and how Hitler came up and kind of became the savior of the people there. Similar to that, the South was in the ruins, and white supremacist organizations like the KKK, that's the Ku Klux Klan, they came up and they kept blaming the now free Black people for all the ills, just like Hitler's Germany blamed the Jews for all the ills. So anytime when there's a chaos, I guess there'll be some, a supremacist or some kind of a racist person who stand up and say, okay, this is where the problem lies. That's what happened. And because of this, all these supremacist organizations came up like KKK, etc. Virtual slavery continued in the southern states for another 100 years. Remember, slavery officially was abolished, but still, you don't have to be a slave in a cotton plantation. That was gone. But slavery, technically, virtual slavery still existed. So around from 1867 to around 1965, right, there were many southern states which followed the Jim Crow laws. Now, in the US, they have this federal laws which govern the entire country in certain areas, and each of the states have the freedom to enact some of their own laws, which are for the particular state. So all the southern states, they had these laws called the Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow, incidentally, is a derogatory term for a black person. Which laws they enforced racial segregation in these states. Now there were laws for education, for travel, for shopping, for relationship between the two races. In fact, the laws restricted the life of a black person to a very, very small sphere. They could only do this much and nothing more than that. It was only in 1964 that the then President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, and racial segregation was made against the law. Okay? So this is the brief history about it. Now, if you look at the story, what is the story about? As I said, it is set in Jackson, Mississippi, and the year is 1962, 62 and a little bit of 63. It is about the relationships between young, white, rich, married women and the black maids who looked after their houses, their families, their children. Okay. Now, there are three of them, three white girls called Eugenia, who's also called Skeeter, Phelan, Hilly Holbrook, and Elizabeth Leafold. They are childhood friends. Okay. They've been friends since kindergarten. And they're all rich white girls with a privileged upbringing. And the sole goal of every rich white girl in Jackson, Mississippi is to get married. And that is the reason they go to college, to get themselves husbands. Both Hilly and Elizabeth have gone to college. They've not completed because they got a husband. So they left college, got married, and are back in Jackson. Now, Skeeter is different, right? She is 23. She's not married. She's not yet found a husband, so she's practically an old maid. She's actually finished college, and she wants to be a journalist, right? That's what she wants to do. Now, Skeeter is told by a publisher in New York to write something different. So she decides to write a book about what colored maids working for white women feel about them. Now, this is a very difficult book to start in 1962 because racial segregation is everywhere, especially in Mississippi, and no colored maid is willing to talk about their white employer and what they feel about working for them, because they know they're going to jeopardize their jobs, and maybe even worse, maybe something might happen to them, their lives as well. Finally, there's one maid called Abilene Clark, who is Elizabeth Leafold's maid. That's Skeeter's friend's maid, who agrees to talk to her. And she eventually ropes in her friend, Minnie Jackson, who was earlier employed by Hilly Holbrook. But then she was fired by her because Hilly didn't like her. She did something, and Hilly's spreading lies about her, saying that she's a thief. So these two finally get together with Skeeter, and the book progresses. As it progresses, the three of them became kind of friends. They also, more maids join in, and the book is actually completed. But once it is completed and it's like ready for publishing, everybody is really scared because they know that if their identities are discovered, then the consequences are going to be terrible. They might even lose their lives. It's that bad. So what to do? Minnie comes up with an idea. She says that I'll tell you something about Hilly, something which happened to Hilly. Let's put that incident in the book. So that, and that's something which is terrible, which happened, and Hilly will not want anyone knowing that happened to her. And so as insurance, let's put that in, so that when it comes out, even if people think it's about Jackson, Hilly will insure and insist that it's not about Jackson. So they do that. Now, what exactly is this terrible, awful incident which Minnie is talking about? Now, when Minnie has been fired by Hilly, she's obviously very angry and fired because of lies. Hilly spreads a lot of lies about Minnie, which makes it very difficult for her to get another job. So what she does is, now Minnie is very famous for her chocolate pies. So what she does is she bakes chocolate pie, and she takes a revenge on Hilly by putting her own shit into the chocolate pie. Okay, now Hilly, she goes there, gives it to Hilly, and Hilly says, okay, fine. She's probably come to apologize, and she eats 2 slices of that chocolate pie. So in effect, Hilly has actually eaten Minnie's shit, which Minnie tells her, and that is something which Hilly obviously doesn't want anyone else to know. So Minnie says, let's put that incident in, with, of course, disguised names and all that. Nobody knows it's for these people, but Hilly will know that it's about her. So therefore, she'll insist that it's not Jackson, so that people don't understand it from. So, well, the book is published, the gamble works, and though quite a few people actually find out or think that the book is about Jackson, Hilly is the one who keeps insisting that no way, The book is not about Jackson, it's about somewhere else, it's all lies, nothing is true, etc. Now the book is published, it is printed, it is taken by everybody, it is read by everybody. There are consequences, of course, some not so good consequences. A couple of maids are fired by their employers because the employers realize that it's actually their stories. Minnie's husband loses a job. Abeline Clark loses her job. But other than that, they're mostly positive outcomes. Hilly is no longer the queen bee of that community, and she's perpetually scared, and she's always worried that people will find out and guess that it is she who ate that particular chocolate pie. Minnie leaves her abusive husband, and she stays with her new employer, who's a good person. Evelyn decides to retire from housework and from nanny work and become a writer. Skeeter gets a dream job offer from New York and leaves Jackson to get to New York. So all in all, the end, this is what happens. So the story, broadly, this is what the story is. Now, Katherine Stockett, who's the author, is actually a lot like Skeeter. She was born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. And she also studied in the University of Alabama, and she worked in New York in a publishing house, a lot like Skeeter. She started the book to overcome homesickness and sadness after 9/11. When 9/11 happened, she was in New York. She was very upset. She wanted to go home and be with her family, but obviously she couldn't. So to counteract that, she said, okay, let me write about my family. And she started writing about her colored maid, Dimitri, who looked after her family and her when she was a child. While writing about Dimitri, the book evolved into this book, The Help. It took about 5 years for her to write the book, and it was very difficult to get it published. She had some 60 rejections. Finally, it was published in 2009. And of course, the rest, as they say, is history. It was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list for more than a year. And it stayed on that list for more than 2 years. There were some controversies about the book. There was this, her brother's maid called Abeline Cooper, who sued Katherine in 2011, claiming that the character of Abeline in the book was actually based on her, and she was not at all informed about it or consulted or anything. Now, Katherine denied it, and the court did not really get through the case, or they kind of, left it out because they said the statute of limitations was over. There was nothing about the content of the case. They said, okay, fine, you should have told it earlier. So that's the reason the case was dismissed. Now, Katherine Stockett is a kind of a flash in the pan writer, I think, because that's the one and only book that she's written. She's not written any book after that, and she stays in Alabama. She's no longer in New York. I want to talk about the characters. There are a lot of smaller characters in the book, which maybe later on we can discuss in our discussions. But the 4 main characters is what I want to talk about. Okay. So the first and the most important character, of course, is Skeeter Phelan. Now, she's an outlier in that community, in her views, in her opinions, in her dreams, in her appearances. Everything is different about her. And in 1960s Jackson, that makes for a very lonely life. Now, Gone with the Wind is referenced a lot of times in the book. And in fact, the reason Skeeter gives for writing about this book is that she tells that Margaret Mitchell covered the glorified Mammy figure in Gone with the Wind, but no one asks how Mammy felt about it. So she says it's all the Black lives have been talked about from the white perspective. No one has talked to the actual Black people and said, okay, what do you think about it? And so that is why she said, I want to write this book. Now, when she starts writing the book, it gives her a lot of, it opens her up to different experiences, to different lives. And that is what gives her the courage to break out of this life that she's born to. I mean, she's born in Jackson, and she's got a life that she's supposed to live, but she doesn't want to. So this book gives her the courage to break out of that and get away from Jackson. The other main character in the book is, of course, Hilly Holbrook. She is the leader of the White Girl Pack in Jackson, and she's a vindictive racist. Okay, she genuinely believes. I mean, she knows that Blacks are dirty and they have diseases and they are inferior, and because she leads the pack, everyone else also feels the same. Nobody can kind of defy her or say anything else. So she firmly believes in racial segregation and separate but equal, which is the line which was given by the government, saying that, okay, we have racial segregation, they are separate, but they're equal, which is, of course, all nonsense, because they are definitely separate, but they're definitely not equal, right? The Blacks and the whites are definitely not equal. The other main characters which we have are Abeline Clark, who is one of the Black maids who is assisting Skeeter. She's the oldest of all of them and probably the wisest. She actually changes in this book from a quiet, mild maid to one who wants to protest and speak out against injustice. She says that she has a son called Trilor who had an accident at his workplace, and his white supervisor just kind of threw him in front of the hospital and went away. And eventually Trilor died. So she said when he died, she says that a bitter seed was planted inside her, which kind of uh, grew because when the book started was talked about. Okay? So she evolves from being a quiet person to someone who stands up to injustice. Now, she's been a nanny to white children all her life. In fact, the current white child, who's Elizabeth Leafold's daughter, May Mobley, is a 17th child that she's looking after. And this sentence, which I really like in the book, is what Minnie says about Eveline. She says she moves to another home when the child stops becoming colorblind. So in the beginning, when the child is colorblind, they don't realize that black is black and white is white. They just know that Abeline is their nanny and they just love her. But as they grow older, they start becoming like their mothers or their fathers, and they realize, oh, they're no longer colorblind. They look at white and they look at black. So when that happens, Abeline leaves and goes to another house. I found that was a nice sentence that she wrote. So I like the way Abeline talks to May Mobley, who's her charge, who's Elizabeth Leafold's daughter. Now, Elizabeth is completely not interested in her daughter. And I like the way that Abeline tries to bolster the small child's confidence. Now, the child is about 3-4 years old at that time, from 2 to 3 is what she is. So she keeps telling her every day that you is kind, you is good, you is important. So this is the way she tries to bolster up her self-esteem. And in the end, she does stand up to Hilly and decides to follow her own path. The other character is Minnie Jackson. Now she's a firebrand, and in her own words, she's a sass mouth. Right? She stands up for herself with everyone else, but not with her abusive husband. In fact, her sassiness and the fact that she acts before she thinks is why she's the one who has the maximum number of jobs in Jackson, because she keeps getting a job and getting fired, getting a job, getting fired, getting a job, getting fired, because she can't stop being sassy. Okay. She also talks about Gone with the Wind, and she says, I shouldn't like that movie, the way they make slavery look like a big happy tea party. Again, they talk about slaves only from the point of view of whites, not from the point of view of blacks. In the end, she derives strength from telling her stories. She starts talking about, she says that something hard inside her heart slowly starts melting every time she talks about her stories of what happened to her when she's writing the book with Skeeter. So these are the 4 main characters in the book. Now, if you look at the writing style, as Mohini says, it's a very readable book. Considering the heaviness or the difficult topic that it is, the writing is easy. It's a page turner. You want to read it. It's not. I mean, there are places, of course, where you squirm from the injustice of it, or you feel that, oh my God, what is happening? But still, it is a very readable book. Now she uses a South vernacular voice for the black characters. Now, which was a bit controversial. So many people say that, well, you're a white woman, so what business do you have in talking in the voice of a black woman? Even she herself, Katherine herself, was a bit hesitant about doing that. But I'm not sure I really agree with this, because I think if it's done right, this appropriation of voice can be really sensational. Like, for example, take The Catcher in the Rye. Now, J.D. Salinger is not an angst-ridden teenager, but the way he has used that in the book, I don't think it's a better example of appropriation of voice other than that. So I don't think it's wrong to do that. What I also like is that the language which she has used for the colored maids and for the white people is different, which is what appropriation of voice is all about. But not only that, she has changed the language for Minnie and Abeline, who are both colored. But Minnie's language is more earthy. The kind of metaphors she uses are more, crude, for the lack of a better word. Whereas Abeline's are slightly more refined. So that difference also I thought was, and it is distinct, this difference. She used suspense very well. So we want to know what is this Minnie's terrible awful, which we find out only at the, reasonably end of the book. What happened to Constantine, who was Skeeter's own maid? What is Celia Ford's secret? Why does she go creeping up to the house on the top floor every day when Minnie's there cleaning? So all these things make you want to keep reading the book. The entire book is a first-person account. So there are chapters which in the voice of Abeline, in the voice of Minnie, and in the voice of Skeeter. So each one of them talk about themselves in first person, except for one chapter, which is about this great benefit ball, which is held in Jackson. That is a third person. Now, one reason I think she might have used third person is because I think she wanted to give the reader an impartial account of what happened, without it being colored by any particular person's perspective, white or black. So she wanted to know, well, these are the incidents which happened in the war. Maybe. I very much like the fact that she uses real life incidents to give context. So, things like the first black student who attended the University of Mississippi was actually James Meredith, and in 1962, and there were riots. The governor was defying the law of the land by saying he cannot enter the university. All this actually happened, and in the book we see how it affected the the black hell in Skeeter's house. So she's brought the true story into the book, and shows how it affects the normal people. She uses Martin Luther King's march to Washington, D.C. As a timeline for the submission of the book. Then she uses Medgar Evans' assassination, which again actually happened, as a trigger for awakening the protests in the local black community. So I like all these real life incidents. She doesn't keep the real life going parallel and her story going parallel. She kind of interweaves it, which I thought was quite nice. The main theme, of course, in this book is race, right? Racial discrimination, racial segregation, civil rights, the violence which is associated with the racial segregation. The book talks about the worst of the false stereotypes that they have about Black people, that they are lazy, they are dirty, they carry diseases, they are in general less intelligent, less important, less valuable than white people. They are inferior to white people. All these stereotypes are all part of everyday life in Jackson. The laws of the land also enforce them because of the Jim Crow laws. And in ordinary conversations, people just take it for granted as that is the way it is. And these beliefs therefore get passed down from generation to generation. Nobody kind of questions it. The blacks obviously distrust the whites a lot because they are betrayed by them at every point. And it's very clear to them that the whites consider themselves superior and they are inferior. The violence is again a very integral part of the book. Violence of when the KKK shoot Medgar Evans just out in front of his own house, in front of his children. The violence which happens when James Meredith tries to become the first, or he does actually become the first black student to enter the university. All this violence forms an integral part of the story. The other themes which I want to talk about is gender discrimination. Right now, it's a very important theme because in Jackson, the white women are valued in Jackson by their ability to produce children and to be supportive of their husband. The black women are expected to be passive workhorses, right, who ignore their own homes and families so that they can take care of their employees' homes and families. The white babies are supposed to be cute, roly-poly, and nice to look at. That's the prototype. So anyone who does not conform to these prototypes and who's different, who does not fit in, like say Skeeter or Minnie or May Mobley, all of them, they have a very difficult time, right? But Elizabeth, you have emotional and psychological issues which are coming up. Now, Elizabeth Leafold is not a maternal person at all. In today's time, I think she would have had a she would have created an empire, a dressmaking empire, because that's what she loves doing, without a husband, without a child, because she doesn't really want that. But at that time, because it's 1960s Jackson, she's supposed to be married, she's supposed to have children. So whether she likes it or not, that's what she has to do. This is psychological. I mean, that's why she's actually doesn't like children. That's why she treats her child the way she does. There are emotional, psychological issues which are present in which they must hide. All these women under the facade of being perfect wives and perfect mothers. One of the girls we hear about is Luann, who is actually obviously depressed, and she has also tried to commit suicide a number of times. But her husband tells her that she must shape up or ship out. That's it. So she just covers up her scars and gets the help that she needs from her maid rather than the family. So these emotional, psychological issues for women are completely ignored. They're just supposed to be the way they are. They're supposed to be, and that's it. That's the only thing. There's society, class, family, hope. These themes are also there. You know, the discrimination is not only about race or gender, but also about class. Now, Celia Foot, she's a married white lady who is ostracized by the other ladies because she's not like them, right? She's not born privileged or rich, and she has married way up the social ladder. So therefore, she keeps trying to get accepted, but that's never going to happen. We know that. So that is the society and the class discrimination. You have Hilly is the leader. The societal behavior is dictated by the leader. So whatever the leader feels, nobody else is. It's like a group of sheep who just follow. It's like that. So like in 1984, the way he says that the sheep do all the running around, and they are the ones who kind of. It's exactly. I thought that was what the ladies of those that group reminded me of. That's dictated by Hilly. What she says and feels is what is carried on by the ladies. There are so many dysfunctional families that I really can't find a single well-adjusted, cohesive family unit in the book at all. I just couldn't find it. Parenting. Parenting, there are so many examples of bad parenting. Miss Skeeter's mother makes it very obvious that she's a disappointment to her. Skeeter's a disappointment. And I think that's one of the saddest things that a child can experience. I mean, I can see similarity between Skeeter's mother and May Mobley's grandmother, who's also keeps nitpicking on May Mobley. May Mobley's mother ignores her completely. Now, I'm not sure what is worse, actually, being ignored by your parent or knowing that you are not what your parents want. I mean, both are bad. Not really sure what is worse. There are a couple of examples of good parenting by parents as well as those who are not really parents. And Minnie is a fairly good parent to her brood of kids. Evelyn, of course, is a wonderful surrogate mother to May Mobley. I really like the way she tries to bolster Elizabeth's neglect by trying to, trying to negate Elizabeth's neglect by bolstering May Mobley's self-esteem. I also like the way she tries to teach her about discrimination by telling her the story about the Martian who was green. So it's actually a kind of rip-off on Martin Luther King. She calls him a Martian. So I thought that was pretty smart. The other thing which I think that a good theme is about growth and justice. Now, when I say growth, I mean growth in the characters. All the characters, they evolve and they grow. There's change in perceptions. Now, Skeeter, when she starts off, she just sees the help as just people in the background, who are there to make life easy for them, make her life run smoothly. She doesn't see them as actual individuals until she starts writing about them, talk to them. Then she says, oh, she perceives them as actual individuals, as actual people. That happens, that's the change happens in Skeeter. Then Abilene and Minnie. In the beginning, obviously, Skeeter's white. You don't trust her. Slowly, they start trusting her. Slowly, they start realizing, okay, she may be white, but she is still on their side and she can protect them. All the maids who are talking to Skeeter, they all change from being submissive and mild to becoming someone who's fighting against injustice. They all start speaking out and telling their stories. This is the evolution which happens. Justice is given to everybody, especially Hilly. Hilly is no longer the queen bee, and in fact, in the end, Abilene kind of shuts up the queen bee, Hilly. So justice is served to everybody. Now, I want to end by giving a little bit of my take. I mean, what I felt when I was reading the book. So one thing which I found interesting was I think the similarity between treatment of the help in Jackson and the servants in India. Now I know that there is no racial segregation here, but I think there is segregation in terms of class and birth, money, education. So there are so many households that I know which have separate utensils for their servants. Their servants are not allowed to use the bathroom that they do. There are so many families where the people they talk about the servants or about their families, that kind of people in a way which in a way the way Hilly talks about Abilene. She talks about the diseases that blacks have in front of Abilene, as if that they're invisible and they're just not there. So they don't consider them to be people. So that is something which I thought maybe we could talk about. The other thing which I was saying is that, is it logical to follow some unjust laws because everybody believes the same wrong idea? For example, in Hitler's Germany, the prevalent thought was that Jews are bad, they are the problem, of everything, and therefore they should be persecuted. It's okay. We just don't, they're not like us. That was the prevalent idea. So does that make it logical for them to follow the, the programs which happened, or the persecution of Jews? Or for example, in our country, in our grandparents or great grandparents' time, if a woman lost her husband, well, life was over for her. So it was quite okay for her to commit sati. Yeah, obviously, what else can she do? Her life is over. Or if she was living, then she was, she used to spend the rest of her life suppressed and subjugated and just doing things for the family, not having any fun, not having any kind of enjoyment, because all that part of life is over for her. That was the prevalent notion at that time. Now, from our side in 2024, with the 2024 lens, we know that is completely wrong. We know that is, unjust. But I wonder that if in that time, would somebody feel that was unjust? Would it be logical and say, okay, well, that's the way everybody thinks, so why shouldn't we think that too? Maybe. The, the last thing which I want to talk about is, I find in the book, Stockett has, kept her characters black and white. There's no shades of gray. I mean, that's not a pun. Black and white is what we're talking about. But all the black maids are good, right? There's not a single maid who has done anything remotely bad or nasty. Even the one person, the one maid Jewel maid who actually steals Hilly's ring, she also is justified, because after all, she asked Hilly, and Hilly refused to help, and therefore she was, forced to steal. That is the justification. All the white women except for Skeeter are all bad, and so there's no one who's good. And even the ones that are good, like Luann, for example, we find out they're good only when their black mates talk about them and say that, oh, this is the good things they do. Otherwise, we don't know about that. All the black husbands are bad. Minnie's husband, of course, is totally bad because he's abusive. Evelyn's husband has left her. The only good black men are Trelord, that's Evelyn's son, and his friend Robert, and bad things have happened to them. Trelord has died, and Robert is blinded. So it's, very black and white. There's nobody who's who say, okay, fine, maybe we can understand why they did that, or there's some shades of gray. Nothing. It's very compartmentalized. That's what I thought. Okay. So this is my presentation. I would really love to have a good discussion on it. And thank you. That's what I have.
Thank you. Very well presented. And, you're talking about an era that has from being slavery, now they're trying to come out different. In India, we did the same thing. And if you'll note that it still exists, like the bathroom is supposed to be separate, glasses are supposed to be separate, food will be different. We do that. Instead of giving something to someone in a hand, leave it on that side and they say, take it. ये सब बातें होती है यहाँ भी. And it is becoming, I'm sorry to say this, it's becoming more and more. Because there was a time when it was all going down and it didn't matter. But now I see it becoming more and more. That's how I see it. There's also one thing which I couldn't quite follow, is that because of the black people are kept aside or given a lower rate, is the violence more? The violence that you see seems to be emanating more from the black than anyone else. Is it so?
See, the violence is more because the blacks are subjugated. And unfortunately, it's only by the 1960s that they have had to recourse to violence. And in fact, Martin Luther King anyway was a follower of Gandhi, so he never advocated non-violence at all. But in this, and in fact, the violence was started by the whites, the KKK. They are the ones who came and shot Medgar Evans in his house, in front of his house. And in the book, actually, the blacks have not done any violence. All the violence is done by the whites. In the book, the blacks have done nothing at all. They just take it.
Okay.
It is the whites who are, all the violence is happening. In the riots which happened when James Murray tries to get to university, it's all the white people who are saying, no, we don't want a black person to come into the university.
But that is it. But what you read about happening in the US, etc., is that, well, the police are rough with the black people, that is well known. but the blacks also are becoming a little more,
Yes.
what's it? Are not
Vocal,
taking it lying
vocal
down.
about their problems.
Yeah, and they're not taking it lying down. They speak about it and
Exactly. So
fight
see,
it out.
if you
Which
look
I
at
think,
it,
I don't know
which
whether I think it's a
happens.
good thing or bad thing. How did uh,
Yeah.
is it better to be the Mahatma Gandhi and or
Yeah. But see,
be offensive at the very beginning? Okay,
we
guys.
say, no, that there are people say that there are more divorces nowadays than it used to happen earlier. Why is that so? One of the reasons because women are not taking shit from husbands anymore, which earlier they were. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? So it depends on that. So now maybe the blacks have decided, okay, enough and no more. And that's the reason. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that could be
I
one.
was, you said that all the black characters are good, right? Possibly, in order to show more complex characters, the book would have to be longer. There would have to be more characters. In To Kill a Mockingbird, also,
Yeah,
the blacks are all good.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
that's because these are short, compact books. They have a few characters. They want to give out a message, and this is how they give it. Um, and you know what Satish was saying about the picture being the same with us. I think everyone will agree. I mean, it's
Totally.
an obvious thing. Yes, it is the same. I remember going to a friend's place where she was giving out something in a cup, and her bai was there, and she gave her bai the thing in the same cup and saucer. And the other guests kind of looked
Yeah,
a little alarmed, like, oopsie
yeah,
daisy, are we, eating from the same crockery as the servants
yeah,
eat in this house? But
yeah,
obviously, she was, forward enough to sort of
yeah,
consider that person another human being and not of a
yeah,
different denomination. But certainly it's an existing thing. And it strikes me, there are so many prejudices in the world. Like To Kill a Mockingbird, you see, in class they're reading about prejudice against
yeah,
Jews,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And Scout says, but why about something,
yeah,
something?
yeah,
He is not, why? I mean, they're not black, are they?
yeah.
So here's another prejudice, there are so many prejudices. But, I think, I don't know if you agree or if everyone agrees, when you weigh all the prejudices in the world, I think the most basic one is color. Color. I mean, there's just no way. Like,
I would beg to disagree there a little bit.
yeah, go on.
It's not really color. Color
Hmm.
is so obvious. So it becomes, the other. It's basically othering. We need to
Yeah.
understand this
Hmm.
concept of othering. And it doesn't matter what peg you hang it on. It could be a Jew, it could be blackness, it could be Dalits, it could be working class, it could be anything. The critical factor is othering, and what we need to understand is that the human condition, the way society has gone forever and ever and ever, there has always been distinction, and there has always been an automatic othering in order to feel good, in order to
Hmm.
feel strong, and in order to make scapegoats. I think that's a big
Yeah.
thing. You can't solve a problem because you don't want to, frankly, because wanting to solve a problem means ultimately thinking that everybody is equal, really thinking it, and that everybody is entitled to the same opportunities. Nobody is saying entitled to the same amount of wealth, but same opportunities without discrimination. It means that, and nobody wants that, because the idea is you're operating from from a state of what they call a scarcity mentality. You feel कि if I give away more, or if I give XYZ more opportunities, हमारे लिए कम हो जाएगा. And when you
That's India.
operate
That's
from
India.
no, that's not India, that's everywhere.
Where?
It's everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah.
Everywhere. Why are you not giving equality of opportunity? That's all people need and all really they ask for. In education, in healthcare, whatever it is, the normal human requirements. Any society is supposed to provide safety, education, health, a caring, right? That we are all the same people under the same condition. You just give the equal opportunity. But if you don't, I mean, you have to find a reason for it, because, as human beings, we don't like to feel bad or guilty. So we find a reason by othering.
Yeah.
And that othering then can be any peg. And
So in fact,
frankly,
one
this
of the
has been
things,
the situation for ever since humans started
Yeah.
living together in societies. Though I would also like to make, there were exceptions. I've been doing a lot of studies on native populations, native Indian population, red Indian populations, not red Indian, Native American populations. Uh, nobody studied them, but people are now studying and finding that 4,000-5,000 years ago, there were Native American populations in the Americas. It was populated. And they had this fantastic concept of sharing all resources. They said, we don't own. They had no sense of ownership. And, if you read the stories, you will find that the concept of freedom, equality, liberty, fraternity, these were concepts which the French and the Americans took from Native American societies in the 1700s and brought to France and started the revolution. The concept of democracy actually started from there, not from Athens, by the way, which was not a democracy at all, though we talk about it as such. But all these concepts that we are all human beings, we're the same. If a person is hungry, you cannot let that person go hungry. You have to feed him. If he needs shelter, you feed him. And all resources belong to everybody. They are entitled to the fruits of all resources. Now, that is really something. And apparently it existed, not in all Native American societies, but in many, many of them. And there are debates, there are records of Native Americans in the 17 and 1800s with priests, with other white people, where they say that we don't understand your society. The way you treat your children is horrible. And, white children were always treated very, very badly, I think, till only now. I mean, the way you treat your children, the way you treat your poorer classes, it's unbelievable. It's unthinkable. It's barbaric.
Yeah.
So,
It's
I mean,
always
this
easy
is
to
all there.
hate.
This is just my reading, which is thrown up. I'm not an authority. I do not know, but it makes you think.
And it's also always easier to hate than to love. In fact, one of the books I'm reading, that author says that is why it's easier to, galvanize people through hatred rather
Yes,
than love. I
yes.
mean, you have to find someone
Yeah,
common to
because you
hate.
arouse fear, no?
You've got a, yeah,
You arouse fear.
yeah,
You think, we are threatened. The moment you say
yeah,
that, I mean, that's what's happening in our country too.
yeah.
So, you see, the moment you feel threatened, it's very easy to rally people around. It's a gut instinct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And this concept of difference, when there's a sense of difference, it seems to be, I mean, it's horrible to realize that the human race is so quick to dislike, to hate, to turn to violence, to want to eradicate, what is different, rather than be curious about the difference
I
and
think,
learn from it.
It's
I always
insecurity.
feel that if you look at, say, acceptance, agreement, and understanding, these three things, what most people feel is that to accept, they have to understand, they have to agree. Only then can they accept. To me, they are three separate things. You can accept without understanding, without agreeing. The minute you say, okay, fine, I accept what you are. I don't understand it, I don't agree with it, but I still accept it. Once you differentiate that I think would
No,
probably
and
help.
I think we all need to remind ourselves all the time, that under the skin, we're exactly all the same. We're human beings, we're all human beings. And that's all that matters.
Look, I think that
Latika, you're on mute, Latika. We can't hear you.
Unmute.
Yeah. Alka, you were talking about all of this in the book. Does the author take a stand against this kind of discrimination, racial discrimination, or does she just describe? Is there a point of view that she has?
Yes. Maybe if you look at it from Skeeter's point of view, because see, it's a first person account. So when you say author,
I didn't know that. Okay.
It's a first person account. So there are three characters. All three of them are giving their points of view. So from the white girl's point of view, yes, she definitely does stand up against that. She tries to, what in her own limited way, where she can, and she writes the book, which is the biggest thing that she can do.
Yeah.
To stand up against what the white people are doing to the blacks. So yes, she does. But I think it's more of kind of realizing slowly. And she doesn't get it from the beginning. When Skeeter, the heroine, when she comes back from college, she is the same as everyone else. I mean, not in terms, she doesn't consider the black people as something else. When she starts getting and that idea incident, she actually steals from Abelin's son, which I thought was not a very nice thing to do, because Abelin's son was actually writing about this book, this kind of book. So she kind of takes the idea from there. And that's when she starts understanding the people. And that's when she says, okay, why are we discriminating against them? They're all the same. We're actually all, that's what she said right at the end. We're actually inside with the same people. So it's only after, but yes, she does take a stand. The book itself is a stand.
Okay.
Can I call
Satish, Pratima would, yes, Pratima would like to speak.
Yeah, we're just about to call her.
Yes, Pratima, please.
Pratima, unmute yourself and speak.
Unmute and let's see you also.
Okay.
Let us see your face also.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
yes. Let's hear you.
This
Not
is
now.
mine is a slightly different point of view. I'd like to look at the author herself. I feel that she's, after all, a white woman writing about the black people. Suppose you were to compare this particular novel with The Bluest Sky by Toni Morrison. The kind of representation of the injustice there is much more layered. It's also more sensitive. Here, it's after all a white woman writing about an issue which is not from within. It's a kind of thing that is observed from outside. So however just it might be, it's not very poignant. Given all that, I would say that this also raises the sort of wider issue. Can anyone write about something, can an outsider write about an issue which is not experienced by that person? So to give you a parallel example, as a person who is non-Dalit, can I truly understand what the Dalits go through?
Exactly.
So when I'm writing as a person who is not Dalit, can I really write about it? Do I really understand that? And therefore, I would like to compare this novel with The Bluest Sky. And sorry to say, but I would like to say that The Bluest Sky is much more layered. Even the kind of narratives that are used are unbelievable. Compared to that, the narrative here is very. I would not like to use very strong words, but it's not a very layered kind of, very thought
It is
through
not.
kind of sort
It
of.
is not a deep book. It is not a deep book at all. I mean, and in fact, what you are saying is definitely a accusation which is
Valid.
leveled on the writer by many people. That how can you write in the voice of a black person? But then, to me, I feel if you limit yourself to only what you are, then how do you explore? How do you imagine? How do you, extend yourself? So that means, does a man can only write as a man? Can he not write about what a woman might feel, or vice versa? So I feel it. I totally agree with you. Like Toni Morrison's books are definitely much deeper and much. This is not a deep book. She's trying to uh, bring out some issues uh, in a I wouldn't say superficial, but maybe not as layered a way as someone else, maybe a black writer may have. Because see, what she's trying to talk about is the differences more than about
I
the
just
black.
wanted to say that it could often be that the suppressed class might not be able to voice their own issues. So isn't it better that a member of the upper class, the control group, as it were, voices it for them to the best of their ability? Isn't that better than nothing? Isn't it better than
It may be better than nothing, but if you're in the upper class, you do not know what problems
no?
there are.
Agreed. That we
Also,
agree that of course
you
it's
might tend to
incomplete.
sound
It's-
very patronizing and condescending.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
That is true. That is a danger. That is always a
I
danger.
mean, you
This
think
is
of
why
in India, we always used to say, look at the present company. I have been astounded throughout my time and interaction. Upper classes, they have all along post-independence been saying, oh, where is the discrimination? There's no discrimination. We never face discrimination, obviously. We wouldn't. But those who are discriminated against, they feel it every day. Once I saw it happen. So then, I realized, oh my God, this is just one incident I'm seeing from the outside. But these people have to go through it every day. When they go, all these, we talk about scheduled caste and scheduled reserved category people and all. But when they walk in an office and they're going to the boss who's a Brahmin, he's always got it at the back of his mind, is this guy going to be just with me or not? He's got it at the back of his mind because very often they're not. And that's a daily, it's something you live with every breathing moment. And this is something we cannot understand.
But I think because she uses the first person, I think that patronizing tone is not there. If she had used if Skeeter had
Third
narrated
person.
the story,
Yeah.
then definitely that
No,
could have
it's
crept in.
better than nothing.
Yeah.
Better than.
Yeah. Sheena, don't you want to add to this?
No, I don't want to add to this because I read it really a long time ago and I do remember the story, but I'm enjoying the discussion.
Hello?
So,
Hello.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All
What
right.
about Sanjay? Sanjay is there. And Pratima, we can't see your face. We don't know who you are.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll try. There seems to be some. Can you
There
see me
you
now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I raise yet another issue? What I felt was somewhere this kind of novel also seems to simplify issues in a big way. It might be a book that's sold in a big way, but it simplifies issues. And the moment issues are simplified, I feel that somewhere the answers also are not really found. So there is some, once again, there is the typical issue about a popular book and a more nuanced, more sensitive book. I would know.
Agree. But then in this case, again, I totally agree again with that, because in the end, everything is all tied up properly in a bow. Everything, all the people are all treated well. The bad people are punished, and the good people are rewarded. All those things that happen. But the point is, and I agree totally, it's not a nuanced book and things. But then to bring something to light, to bring it out in the open, isn't it important to spread it out to as many people as possible? If you have an esoteric book which talks about the theory and which is very deep and all, your audience might be limited. You might have a very good book. So in this case, at least you are bringing up the issue in front of people, and then people who are really interested can delve deep, and you have other literature which is definitely talking much more about the theories. So to me, I think one should take this book in the way it is meant to be taken. It is not a treatise on black relationships with white, or black problems. It is not that at all. It is somebody who's trying to write something from the black person's perspective, which in 1960 has not been done. Now it has, but in 1960 it was not done. And in fact, there was another book, I forget the name, which was probably published somewhere in 1955, which talked about a relationship between the white woman and her black maid, and it did not do well. It was not as popular. Why? Because it was a much more in-depth analysis. It was probably harder to understand, harder to relate to. So maybe if you want to popularize something, it's easy. It's better to dumb it down. I mean, again, that's probably not the right choice of word, but to make it easily accessible to all, so that people who really want to get deep into it have at least get their interest piqued, or people who have not thought about it at all at least start thinking about it.
Okay, yes, Mukul.
And we
Yes,
have Sanjay.
Mukul
Sanjay
is
would like
Mukul, you need to unmute.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'd just like to take up what Runa said about othering, and I completely agree with it. I just want to add a little bit to that. I mean, othering, you actually, put down the other. So that you need something to put down, then alone, you can't just say, my religion is great, I'm great, Hindus are great, or whatever. I'm saying it now. You have to, there has to be the other to show how great you are. So you have to put that person down. So the other is, yeah, because in my two fellowship researches in Yeroda and Tadiwala Road, I have talked extensively about Hindu-Muslim relations. That was my topic, and I specifically talked about othering. And there is so much less there than outside in the much more urban area and not in the Vasti, as one might, as
Yeah.
one calls it.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm.
So yeah, because their daily needs for each other, their daily need a gas cylinder. Bhabhi, give it to me. Can you give me 100 rupees? I'll give back in the evening when my husband comes. This kind of thing doesn't make them look at the other person as the other. While as the less we meet, the more we build about them, the more we demonize them. That's what I feel.
Yeah,
And that's my point again. That Runa's, I come back to Runa's
No,
point.
very
that
well
you
said.
need the other to put down. Then alone you are
You need a scapegoat, na, to beat
Yeah.
all the time.
scapegoat. Yeah, whatever.
Mukul,
you have
you
to-
made a very good point. I think that's
I
very well
have a
said.
question for Alka.
Yeah.
Alka, you said that it's not a very deep book, and compared to Toni Morrison, of course, Toni Morrison was a class apart. But then, why did you read it 3 times, and what did you love so much about it?
Because see, for me, a book has to have a good story. The
Yeah.
author has to be a good storyteller. To me, that is paramount.
Correct.
If I like the story, if I like what the author is trying to tell me, then yes. And the first time I read it was, I think, probably maybe 2011, 12, something like that. So at that time, I didn't know much about black and white and what was happening in the US. So at that time, I said, oh, really? This is what happens. And at that time, it didn't strike me about the similarity between servants in India. That came to me later when I read it for the second or the third time. So I like the story. And to me, I think, especially why I took it as a present, is I think this is a book which can, we can instigate a lot of discussion. I feel if there's a book which is very obviously good or very obviously bad, everybody has the same point of view, then what's the point of having a book club discussion? So there has to be a book where people might have one point of view, might have another point of view, might have a third point of view. Then it is good to discuss. And if it is too serious and too heavy, I feel it does not come up as a good book for discussion. To me, that is what I feel. So that is why I like the book, and I like reading books which appeal to me. Some of this appeal to me, and I think it was done. So maybe I don't like reading very heavy books because then I think it takes too much time. I like a page turner. So maybe that's one more reason why I took this book up.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm going to ask Sanjay to say a few words, and then the Kapila and Rashida keeping quiet. Please.
So we have Sanjay first, do we?
Yeah.
Sanjay, over
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I read this book some time ago, and one of the first things that struck me was that it must be one of the very few books where you can write 600 pages without a single male character of any consequence. I found that remarkable. There was that Stuart who makes a brief appearance as Skeeter's love interest, but he does his cameo and disappears. And what Alka said, I think I agree totally that the characters are simply too black and white. And there should have been an element of gray, though I remember, maybe I'm mistaken, but there was this white woman who defended her African American maid when a crazy white man showed up in her backyard. I think it was Celia who did it.
No, it was Celia who did it, but I mean, she was kind of defending herself and the black woman because she was the one who was the scrappy one, and Minnie couldn't run because she was fat. So she did defend.
That's the only concession they made to some kind of not black and white. And now about discrimination, I think it's probably innate to human society, because if there is going to be social order, then there have to be rules. And if there are going to be rules, then there are going to be people who make the rules and people who enforce the rules. Okay, so that discrimination of some kind, a ruling class, is probably essential to human social order. There's no getting away from this. Now it can be on the basis, you be a communist party can be the ruling class, or the white supremacists, or the Brahmins, or whatever you choose to have, but there will always be people who are superior to others, shall we say. And the other reason I think that there will always be difference is because because in society we perform different roles. For instance, if you're a cardiac surgeon saving lives every day, and I'm a cobbler mending shoes under the tree, then obviously you're doing your contribution to society is probably greater than mine, you know. And so that
sure I agree to that.
that is bound to reflect in how I'm perceived and how you're perceived. Is it
No,
not?
but Sanjay, if I'm in the middle of a road and my chappal falls off, I want a
The
cobbler.
cobbler
I
is
don't
the
want a
most
cardiac surgeon.
important person.
So it is not a question of what is
no,
important.
no, cardiac surgeon won't help you then.
So
No,
I
I
definitely
have a
want a
cousin
cobbler.
who's a cardiac surgeon who says, I'm only a cobbler. That's
Yeah.
what he says. I'm
Is that
only,
right?
I
Okay.
think
he says
I
that.
think-
I'm just a cobbler.
Yeah.
I know nothing. I just know how to cut and stitch it up. That's all.
So in fact, what you talked about rules, I agree to some extent, but the thing is, I think what we're talking about, rules are important, of course, in any society. But what we're talking about here is that the rules should apply the same to everybody. What is happening here, that the rules, there's a discrimination of rules, that this rule is applying to you, but not to this person, or this is applying to this person and not to this person. That should not happen based on some random things like color or class or education or, gender. So,
When you're talking of a ruling class, you've straight away brought in this element of some elite,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And therefore,
Yes.
democracy is out, ruled by the people or by a society collectively, which, as I was saying, that Native American ancient societies had it. I believe they used to have debates, and the chief didn't have much power. He had no power. He had no police force. He had nothing. He was just a chief in order to lead. Okay, we'll do this. Or he's like an arbitrator in a way. That's all. But he had no other power. The power lay with the people who discussed amongst themselves and said, okay, this is probably what is best for us to do now, and that's what we do. And that's how it was done. But you can only do that in very small societies.
Yeah,
In societies, you have to have a system. But then that's why democracy evolved, right? Voting, blah, blah, evolved. And it's a very imperfect system, but it's better than a ruling class of elites.
No, ruling class will always have. My point is, whatever the system, even whether it's a communist system or there will be people who make the rules.
You see, you might bring up a person from the very grassroots to rule you, but he will then take on the shade of a ruling class.
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened in Animal Farm. Some people, some pigs are more equal than others.
One at a time.
Sorry. What you're saying is we should have a legislative, a judiciary, and an executive body. So it is not ruling class or anything like that. It's just someone who makes the rules because they have the collective benefit.
Alka,
someone who enforces it.
I'll tell you the simplest possible thing. When I first started doing some work in the city area around us, about 500 people used to be in that area. The person in charge of the ward officer, not ward officer, corporator, came to me, Maja Rajyat. Rajyat. That's how we felt. That in my kingdom, how dare you start working? You didn't listen to me. That was it. And that's where I really started my activism, was that when he said, Maja Rajyat, tumi ka karta. So they feel that happens here, and that is what causes all our problems. That Rajya mera hai, wo aisa nahi hai. Usi ke liye मैं झगड़ता हूँ. Anyway, so guys, any more question? I think someone is putting a little finger up there, and not putting a phone on.
Latika.
Yeah, may I recount a small incident? There have been, of course, non-Dalit writers who have written on the Dalits. They've written, even someone like Premchand has written on Dalits and fiction. There have been Dalit writers who have written about their society, but didn't come to the fore. They have to be recognized, given a platform, and it has to be understood that this is something new that is coming up. And I just want to recount that Times in India in 1973 brought out one very exceptional, this was done by Dilip, one very exceptional supplement where for the first time, the most important Dalit writers were put together, translated, and brought out in forms of short stories or essays or whatever. That was the first major platform given to such writers like Namdev Dhasar and all that. These people became friends of ours afterwards because they could argue, they could, they were educated, they could argue, they could put forward their points of view, both in, conversations as well as in literary terms. So these people needed, and then later on, Sai Paranspe and my husband together wrote a script for a TV series, also based on the writings of a Dalit person. So they need to be given a platform so that whatever they know, whatever they feel, whatever they can be expressed and brought into the public view. Otherwise, these people remain. There are many Dalit writers in India, but we don't know enough about them.
Okay, anyone else waiting to present?
Rashida,
Kapila,
Laila,
Laila,
Kapila.
are you guys
Thank
there?
you. I'm just enjoying the discussion.
That's
Okay.
it, Kapila. Yes, it's meant to be that.
Rashida, what about you?
May I read out a bit about what fairness means in India to people? It's from
Go ahead.
another book which I had been reading, and I found it really very funny. Not only funny, but right now it's relevant too. It's about being fair and what it means to most people. I'm just reading out. The heading is a short digression on snow. To be fair is to be God's chosen. Fairness was more precious than immortality. Immortality, nirvana or moksha. It was on a par with virginity. It was more desirable than all the treasures of the Mughal emperor and the inspiration of the poets. Admittedly, not more sought after than wealth and power, but just as potent and indispensable. For truly, what are wealth and power without a fair skin? There is no doubt about it. There is justice on earth. Justice and a sense of fair play are at the root of reincarnation. Those who walk the righteous path in their previous life are born fair. It mattered little if you were plain as whitewash and had a sick hemoglobin count of 2.7. If you were fair, it was obvious you were beautiful. The rest of humanity was condemned. To be dark was to have committed original sin. Even our gods had undergone color shifts. Since black would not do for humans, how could Lord Krishna be permitted to be dark? They turned him blue. Then the house of Patanwala invented Afghan snow. A patina of Afghan snow could never substitute or pass for fairness, but for those of us who are deprived, discriminated against, and desperate, Afghan snow was till the early 1960s the next best thing to being fair. It was second skin and second nature. It was inconceivable to leave the house without smearing it on your face. It filled craters and leveled the mounds of acne. It stood out like barium in an X-ray plate of the lower abdomen. It was so effective and noticeable, even the fair of complexion would not dream of being seen without it. It was every man and woman's phantom of the opera. The Kathakali mask that made you larger than life. It was your public persona. Without it, you merged and disappeared in a grey mass. It gave you presence. It was society's stamp of approval. But most important of all, it made you accept yourself. Truly, artifice alone could not vouch for the real thing. Nobody knew what was the secret of Afghan snow. It was a glittery sheen on it, and it had a glittery sheen on it, and it transcended the gender gap long before unisex came into fashion. It cut across caste and class barriers. Men and women, young and old, sank their index and middle finger into a bottle of snow. The label outside showed perennial snow-capped mountains, supposedly from the Hindu Kush ranges in Afghanistan. and returned with a glob of the silvery butter and rubbed it into their faces. Having prepared the ground, it was time to overlay it with Himalayan bouquet, or if you could afford it, Kotikura face powder.
But do you know, I was reading a book. I was reading a book on Africa, about novel on African Africa, and there the slimness that women are supposed to have was not considered nice. The more plump the woman was, the better she was, because she's gonna be able to survive better more than the thin, skinny person. That used to be there. And if you look at it in today's last few weeks, we have Ram has come into his colors. All the while, it's no longer the Gora skin that you wanted. Ram has come out in his colors. In fact, who was that saying, who was that in Mahabharata?
Draupadi.
Draupadi was supposed to be the most beautiful woman.
But dark.
Very, very dark.
Very dark. Dark skin glowed. You had that. That was written there, and I've seen it in translations around. We just make our own, what do you call, level of thinking. And say, "Yehi acha hai, wo acha nahi hai." It's all basically why we do it is important. Okay, guys.
Well, Jesus Christ. I mean, Jesus Christ
Jesus
is
Christ.
shown as sort of blonde and blue-eyed and whatnot. How could he be if he was born where he was?
The Jew.
How could he be?
Yeah.
Not Jew, but
Ridiculous.
he was born in Middle East.
Levant.
Do you see the Middle East looks?
He was a Jew, Middle East, Levantine.
Yeah.
Even the Jews have built themselves up into a different color. The Jews who were original Jews are, well, very much like the Arabs.
Yeah.
They're from Mesopotamia, the original Jews.
Yeah.
From Ur, where Mesopotamia was.
Okay.
From there he was led by God to Israel.
Okay, Mo, now take over.
Okay. Yes, I think we should wrap up now.
Yeah.
A few people haven't spoken, but that's their prerogative if they don't want to. I'm sure they've enjoyed the discussion,
Rashida?
and they have, they will be thinking about it. They have picked up something from it, because that's the great thing about discussing a book, right? Reading a book, you cannot be untouched by what you have read. And then, in case you haven't been touched in enough ways, there are all these other readers and other interpretations, other points of view to nudge you in every direction that the book does speak of. So a good book, well read, well presented. Thank you, Alka.
Very well presented.
Well responded to. Thank you, participants.
Good discussion.
Thank you. Now, this was, as I said, a very readable book, not too daunting, not awesome in that sense. Very easy, but saying something very serious also. And all of us had other books, to point to in comparison, which have said similar things, gone deeper or not, whatever. So all this business about caste and the scapegoat and needing someone beneath you. Isabel Wilkerson says that in Caste, at length. I mean, she explores that aspect at length. And what a fantastic discussion we had on caste, in the book club when we did it. So thank you, Alka. Excellent session. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Yeah, so on the 17th of March, I think we have Michelle Bambawale. That's what we have. Yes. So Michelle Bambawale will be coming herself to talk about her own book, Becoming Goan. And we have Mehvash Pirboy to be in conversation with her. So that should be interesting. Now that's a book which has just been released. Michelle is busily traveling all over the country, on these road shows to popularize her book. And we are going to have her speak to us in the midst of all this. So with all the urgency, of a new release. Then just a week later, on the 24th of March, Runa, it's your session, isn't it? Am I right? Yes. So The Elegance of the Hedgehog. Now, isn't that a fascinating title? The Elegance of the Hedgehog? And I thought to myself, what? So wow, yes, I just finished reading the book. Excellent choice, Runa. Really looking forward to that's how the dates are. But I thought that maybe I should take the 31st of March instead. I'll have lessons in chemistry then, have the quiz on the 21st of April, which was closer to Shakespeare's birthday. And we wind up our session that day. And then we have the May break. Hey, thank you very much. Keep reading and tell me what you have enjoyed and what you would like to present.
And
Okay?
any new book that you read or thought of, please.
What you see behind her are her paintings in her own house.
Yes,
here in Pune.
I know.
Okay?
And I have been so engrossed in the discussion, I haven't got up to put the light on.
Okay, good thing.
Okay, that's the way it should be.
All right, everyone, then bye-bye for now.
Bye.
See you soon. Okay, see you on the 17th. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.